Welcome everyone. This is Danny and Karl with Get Wisdom, and today we're going to continue with our channeling series. And today we're going to go back to the subset of the channeling series, viewer questions for creator. So this one is like the Christmas edition for all of our viewers, and so thanks for joining us, and thank you especially Karl for doing this with us every week. And we have 9 questions today, and I'm not sure which one. I think we've done probably somewhere between 10 and 15 of these viewer questions per creator. And
Yes.
they are questions from our viewers, and sometimes they're edited a little bit, but we're hopefully selecting the questions that are going to be most valuable to our viewers.
Yes, and by editing, they're edited to ensure maximum clarity. In some cases, brevity also, to kind of get to the central idea and not have all of the verbiage and so on, just for reasons of time and efficiency,
Yeah,
but mostly to make them understandable because that's critical. As a channeler, it's my intention for what I am asking of creator that drives the process. So if I don't understand the question, not much can happen
right.
because it goes through my filter. And if there's a vacuum there, then it'll just drop into the vacuum and get lost. So that's all we mean by that. And I love doing these because it's a way to honor our supporters, our viewers who take to heart our message and trust that they'll get something out of such an interchange.
Mm-hmm.
So they're basically on board for the most part, I think, in asking questions. Otherwise, why would you waste your time if you think it's,
Yeah,
bogus or something? This is something we cannot prove. And in fact, Creator will tell you if you ask, it cannot prove that it's real. This is part of the test of us always, and it never stops. So it's not like, okay, you reached the threshold and now, God will let you on in the inner circle, let you in and tell you all these wonderful things you never knew.
right. You
And
get the big data dump, and then your
right,
own
right.
secret file, and yeah.
No, it does not work that way because I'd love to have a big data dump, even with all I know. But Creator is still very careful to maintain that separation and that distance, rewarding me for my own creativity and initiative up to a point, but not leaping out ahead and giving me information I could not know otherwise that would be verifiable by a third party and then constitute, a definitive proof that I'm getting some other consciousness out there. If you look at the body of work, it's very clear there's something that's not me there because this has been it's a growth process, an incremental accumulation of knowledge. And for the most part, I'm asking questions for which I don't know the answer going in. That's the reason I ask them.
Yeah. Sometimes we can guess what the answer might be.
Yeah,
We could
yeah,
surmise from the previous work. I think this happened with the Arcturian channeling to some extent, or maybe to a great
yeah,
extent. Actually, a lot of the answers that we got there were kind of predictable based on what we had learned through prior channelings. Most for the
yeah.
most part.
Yeah, it was a validating experience for me that there wasn't some big revelation for me personally
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
compared to the body of knowledge we've accumulated. And that's just a testament to the fact we probe things very diligently and gone back again and again to increase our knowledge and our depth of understanding. So we've chipped away at that uh, kind of secret place in the secret doings to really rough out a lot about what's taking place and why.
And the other thing we should point out, Karl, in this discussion is that the other things that we don't get is like incriminating information. So
Yeah.
we're not going to name names and assign blame. Um, the divine realm creator is not going to help us in any kind of muckraking exercise. Like you've explained before, the divine realm's not a big fan of our justice system, or our ideas of punishment or justice in many regards. And so the idea here is to avoid karmic entanglement and even protect us from danger. Like, don't give us information that could get us into trouble with people who are still minding the store, so to speak.
Yes.
Controlling the governments, etc.
Yes, and by the same token, Creator will not be an advocate for particular individuals. If we ask about a certain individual with a pointed question, with a need to know, and it's highest and best for us to have the information, Creator will speak to whatever those aspects are about an individual. But will not do name dropping, will not just pull people out of the repository to showcase them or back them or recommend them for any particular reason. And that is deliberate, again, to not be leading, but also knowing human nature is such that it will tend to constitute a sort of a blessing from on high. And it might be the case there are many such individuals. So to showcase one and not the many others is unfair.
Right.
It gives that person an advantage. So I have a certain distinction in being able to talk with the Almighty and receive information directly. But that's not stopping others from making the attempt to do so either. So I'm not closing off options for anyone. But I've seen this again and again.
And nor do you have the power to do so. Right?
Well,
right? I mean, this is not an exclusive enterprise. Yeah. Everyone can talk to God, and everyone was intended to talk to God. And at some point, hopefully, there'll be a whole bunch more people, such as yourself, being able to do what you're doing, because we need them. We desperately need them.
Well, there are millions who talk to God every day through prayer.
Yeah.
And they may or may not get a sense of being answered or acknowledged. That's something you can cultivate with your intuitive ability. You may not get a word for word kind of reply with information, content, and so on, like I do with the channeling. But it's not meant to be an exclusive thing in terms of having a relationship, having a partnership. That's a birthright for everyone, and everyone should strive to cultivate it because it comes in handy, because you're part of the divine team, whether you know it or not. You have a mission to carry out, and you can get much support and guidance and help from the Almighty for the asking, but you need to keep it in mind, and you need to work at that a bit and do an outreach on a regular basis, making requests for that insight and guidance, and then it can happen.
Right.
Otherwise, you could choose to be alone, and you will not be reeled back in. That will be allowed because you're in charge. When you're here as a physical human, you're in charge of your life. The only thing that may happen to you that you're not choosing is to be attacked by darkness. That's the dilemma that humanity faces. But those beings have free will also, and it's your responsibility to deal with that too.
Right.
And ideally, you would deal with it by reaching out to the Almighty for help. That's what I do, and do it on the part of many people who hire me to give them assistance. So we'll see what happens here, and this will be adding some further knowledge and perspectives about things that have been of interest to certain individuals, and I'm sure they have relevance for many who will be listening, because our lives are not so different from one another's.
Yeah.
And there are common concerns about life. And
Yeah, so we have a spot on the website called Questions for Creator, and there's some guidelines in there, and sometimes people read the guidelines, sometimes they don't. We do get a lot of personal questions on there that aren't going to get used, but that's a warning up front. In some cases, when the personal questions come through, and if we feel like that they have general interest, then we'll kind of rephrase them so that they're not, they no longer they lose their personal focus, and they're expressed in more general terms, and then we'll ask the question. But for the most part, personal questions aren't included. So we have 9 questions today. It's probably going to be a pretty long channeling, so I think we should probably get started.
yes, we could do that. Yes, yes.
Session.
Yeah. The only other thing I would say about that, Denny, is that if people are in a dire circumstance where they're really struggling with something and have a desperate need to understand more about what's happening or get some help with it, it's better to reach out directly and engage our services to work with you.
Yeah. And we have a contact page, and we also have an order page where we could for the healing services.
Exactly.
Yeah. Right.
Because I don't want people to feel like they're going to be totally on their own if there's just a personal concern. That is how I learn most things that matter. It's dealing with people in their dilemma, and when they've got a big juicy problem, I'll look into it, and in the doing, sometimes learn something profound about healing and how to go about it in a better way. So all of it is of value, and it's not that your personal life and concerns don't matter. They clearly do, and it's just there are different ways of going about getting personal assistance. If there's a question that's personal but might be instructive to others because there's something unique about it or unusual, I mean, go ahead and fire it away and send it in, and we'll see.
Yeah, exactly. Okay.
So I'll just take a moment to get in the state of consciousness that I need and put safety around the work, and go to Creator and ask to be connected to its consciousness and to have that connection protected and protected from interference. And we'll go from there.
Okay.
This is Source Creator speaking.
Thank you for joining us. A viewer asks about a relative who is addicted to alcohol and cigarettes. The viewer is an LHP practitioner and has done the Lightworker Healing Protocol more than once. Yet this relative continues with heavy use of alcohol and cigarettes. Would it help to keep doing LHP, or is free will overriding it, or is maybe something else going on?
Both of these things are true. The work is of value. The work, if continued, will be of value. But for now, the desires intended for the healing to solve these problems are being overridden by free will choice. The divine cannot take away the ability of anyone to make choices and act upon them of any kind. We often can stay the hand of the criminal through an inner reawakening of the possibility of something better. And this may prick the conscience. It may simply remind the person they are taking an undue risk, and it might be better in their self-interest to stand back a bit and reconsider what they are about to do. Both will avert a tragedy. and both are of value and will help bring someone closer back to an alignment with the divine path. When someone is abusing themselves through an excess of alcohol or use of tobacco, it is often deeply rooted because of the habituating nature of these substances, which, after all, would not be ingested were it not for the perceived benefits in feeling better, having a calming effect, having a moment of pleasure that helps to alleviate inner stress and the concerns of the day. In addition to this, there are deep karmic roots for the use of both types of substances. Most people living today in prior lifetimes have indulged in alcohol use, and many have used tobacco as well. In those earlier eras, with lives relatively short for the most part, through accident or infectious diseases, there was less appreciation of the long-term consequences. To be sure, there were alcoholics who were quite impaired, and this was well recognized as a pitfall. But the insidious effects of smoking were little appreciated because the cause of illness altogether was mysterious, and there was no ability to construct a mechanistic explanation for how tobacco smoke could end up in causing something like cancer of the lung or other breathing impairment, when acutely it did not do so. The long-standing use over generations in prior lifetimes has left a legacy of many, many indulgences that at that time were considered a benefit and not only pleasurable, were perhaps the only pleasures the individual enjoyed about their lives, which otherwise might have been quite harsh and brutal in the need for doing hard labor and with many deprivations in dealing with extreme cold, heat, conditions of limited food supply on occasions, and so forth. So the ability to indulge in one of these so-called vices was a high point for the user. This is deeply ingrained and present in the Akashic records of the former smoker and drinker, and the deep subconscious will know it. That hidden part of the mind reviews all the other lifetimes, looking for things of value to know, to cope with the current life conditions. Not only will re-engaging with drinking alcohol or smoking bring the immediate gratification that is their potential, it will reawaken the roots and the connections to many prior experiences of indulgence that were deeply satisfying in the past and never associated, for the most part, with difficulty of any kind. That might not be so for someone who became a severe alcoholic. But that introduces another sort of difficulty, that on the negative side, the karmic consequence of self-abuse will often be to reintroduce the temptation in a new incarnation, thus challenging the person to restore a balance in things by saying no, by healing the old proclivities and the desire to re-engage in a selfish, short-sighted way and take the risk of hurting the self, which is a soul abnegation and a deficit karmically. However it comes about, those prior circumstances will be reawakened in the new life. And this is what the individual in question is in the grip of. Not only is there a strong desire to persist with the self-abuse, it is deeply rooted in many other lifetimes of indulgence. All of that is free will on display, the free will to do what one chooses, for better or for worse. It cannot be opposed directly by the divine realm. We cannot go in and stop anyone from engaging in particular conduct directly. It is your power as a human being to make your own choices, but then you must live with them or die with them, as the case may be. So this does not mean there is no hope of change. The Lightworker Healing Protocol is the perfect instrument to use for these circumstances where someone will not accept coaching or friendly advice and concern from loved ones. The divine can institute karmic repair and healing, working through other lifetimes to begin a process of restoration of a more even-handed perspective. In most cases, this is a long-term effort because there is so much in the past that is out of alignment. It cannot be simply swept away. So as we work from the outside edges of other lifetimes towards the middle, being the current moment in the current incarnation, much time can go by with little sign of any change. But all of the healing work that is done will have an impact and will be reflected on that individual's future. So we would suggest to not give up, but continue the outreach on this individual's behalf. There will be opportunities as well for guidance to be imparted via the higher self or creator directly. And in those opportunities, we can plant some seeds for encouraging self-reflection and potentially a reconsideration of the risks. And eventually, people may listen, take it to heart, and then choose of their own free will to find a way to moderate their use and eventually taper off and quit altogether. If you keep going, we can keep going as well. That is one of the virtues of using the Lightworker Healing Protocol, because you can be an advocate on behalf of anyone for the divine to work through the higher self, to encourage, to uplift, to guide, and to heal ongoing issues of all kinds. And that is a tremendous blessing.
What is the true origin of tarot cards? Are they portals for the demonic? Are some decks more benign than others? For example, the Rider-Waite deck in comparison to the Thoth deck or the Egyptian decks. Can they be used for divine purposes when you call upon the divine realm and source creator for protection and guidance? Are the other divination card decks in the same category, so to speak, as a tarot?
Any tool used to enhance an intuitive connection to higher realms carries with it grave responsibility and considerable risk in encountering difficulty. The reason is that you are in a troubled realm. It is the realm not only of the humans you know of in the physical, but this dark spirit cohort that resides within the lower astral plane and infesting many, many humans directly. This is an invitation to mischief unless there is divine protection put in place to see that outside influences are excluded and only a divine influence can participate in the session, how it unfolds, and in what ways it might be interpreted. All such conveyances of communication, like the tarot decks and Ouija boards, the runes of old, the crystal ball, any adjunct for obtaining information from beyond the self can bring in false messengers, distorted perceptions, and consciousness of many kinds, most of which is highly dangerous, inimical to human interests, and can lead a person into serious trouble. This is not guaranteed, but will often take place unless there is a lofty divine level intention and a request for safety made explicitly and directly in conjunction with the practice itself. In the same way, if you are a spiritual person and you go out on the town in the dark of night and venture forth through a dangerous neighborhood, you may be protected, but you may not. The reason being, you have chosen through free will to put yourself at risk. The divine cannot simply take back the risk potential simply because you might not be thinking of it, even as you're choosing to put yourself in harm's way. This is why life has consequences, and we cannot create a life of perfection for anyone. This is why the young need protection from the parents until they are ready to venture forth on their own. Everyone needs divine oversight and protection if you are in spiritual alignment, that only means you are not harboring dark thoughts. It does not mean you have an agreement via an explicit request to the divine to keep you safe during a particular experience. So, what we are saying is, if you want to use such an adjunct for divine purposes, you must see to it that only divine energies are involved. There are some sources of materials of this kind who will imbue the deck itself with dark energy and with links to dark consciousness through practitioners of the dark arts. In a sense, they are cursed, and they will call forth troublemakers whenever a human being connects to the energy that is residing within the tarot deck. This you do not want to have happen. This is easily dealt with by a request to the divine for an energetic cleansing to remove and disconnect any entanglements of consciousness that are non-divine, to render the deck neutral with respect to low-level energy, and to allow only a divine interaction for a divine purpose. This needs to be expressed explicitly in the form of a prayer directed to the Almighty, not a lesser level energy calling forth the four directions, the power of light, and so forth, are a symbolic gesture, but do not invoke the highest realm of the deity. This is why the New Age movement has misdirected so many people for so long a time. You are being told you have divine powers, although you exist as a physical and diminished individual, not a light being in the moment. This changes things. It catapults you back into a state of infancy, in effect, where you need protection, just as the young child needs protection, not knowing what harm can come its way through wandering into a roadway or walking off with a stranger who is friendly and extends the offer of candy. The answer is to work with materials that are freed of any negative energetic entanglements. And then each time they are used, to reach out again to the divine and ask for divine oversight and protection to shield all present from any outside interference or awareness of the undertaking. And in this way, a shield can be put around the experience such that it will be invisible to outside inspection, other than those humans present, participating, and the divine agent or level from which you are seeking guidance. But the latter needs to be requested explicitly. If you invite the cards to speak to you, you are not talking to the divine. And any other consciousness may jump in to pick up the conversation. This starts a slippery slope where you may depart more and more from a divine experience and encourage encroachment unwittingly of a lower level being. Because of free will, that might have to be allowed if you are requesting it, even in ignorance. And this is how these things happen. You need to get comfortable once again, reaching to God, reaching to the Almighty, the true holy source of the universe, the creator of all that is. And feel that within your heart, not as a token gesture of recognition, but as an explicit, genuine, heartfelt outreach with belief. If you doubt the existence of the Almighty cannot answer. And protection might be partial or denied altogether. This may seem like a harsh penalty, but it is simply energy doing what it does. In order to recognize and honor human free will, we must toe the line very carefully to not overstep the boundaries. Humans make the decisions and set the tone as well. We must follow human intention. If that intention is weak, mistrusting, doubtful, skeptical, or cavalier, half-hearted, this will inevitably be factored into the level of response, the level of oversight, the level of protection, and the level of guidance that can be delivered through divine energy to create a display of the tarot that will be recognized as a meaningful analysis or answer to a query. That can all happen with an exquisite and beautiful outcome because it can be used as an adjunct in an effective manner for divine communication. This is true of the Ouija board as well, to have it spell out words of a message in answer to a prayer, to obtain yes or no information. This is true of pendulums used for the same purpose. If it is done with divine blessing and requests for safety, accuracy, and protection from outside interference, and with strong belief, all can be a highly effective facilitation of communication. But without those criteria being met, there will be a level of risk, and it can vary even from moment to moment. Energy is dynamic. It is not static, like a written contract whose words are always identical whenever you may go to look at it. Intention is fleeting. It waxes and wanes. And this is important to keep in mind as well, that good thoughts are best followed by more good thoughts. And this is a way to build inner strength and resilience. And that too can be requested of the divine to strengthen belief, confidence, and comfort in doing any kind of outreach desired by a person. If it is for a lofty purpose, it will be supported by the divine and will be answered in kind.
Okay, thank you. We often hear that it's a good idea to wear sunscreen. Some medical studies say that sunscreen can prevent premature aging and skin cancers. Others recommend not to use such chemicals that are found in sunscreens, as they can actually be harmful. We know that many products are contaminated or manufactured using chemicals that are actually toxic, and we've even been warned that some products contain nanotechnology that is intentionally used for nefarious purposes. Do we really benefit from sunscreen, or is prayer for protection from the harmful rays of the sun enough? We know that there is variability in terms of belief quotient for all humans, even among believers, so is using sunscreen recommended when exposed to the sun to any significant extent?